Brother Tragos, for those of you who know me, I'm designing something awesome. But I got to look at it two sides. It's kind of like you've got the left half of the balanced man, which is the internal side, right? You got the right side, is the external side. You've got the top part of it above the neck. You've got the bottom part that's below the neck. All right? Got it? Up, down, left, right. Pretty complicated concept here. So when I think about it, when I think about my why statement and how can we actually do it, how can you create a place where we can make positive change, where we can actually make a profound difference? You know, I look at my life in 4 different areas. When I look kind of above the neck on the internal side, that's the knowledge side. When I look internally below the neck, that's the fitness side. That's, you know, getting out there and being active. When I look on the other side of that, the external, you know, that's the heart. That's the service aspect of it. And what are we doing to really serve and give back to our communities? When I look at the top part, that's all about people. That's about looking out there. That's the external above the head. It's about the things. It's about empowerment. It's about leadership. It's about motivation. And if you break a lot of these things down, you know, there's a lot of good quotes that come along with it. We're not going to spend a lot of time on them. But you know, one of the ones that really stands out to me is that we should see man in pursuit of knowledge, not knowledge in pursuit of man. And I think this weekend was a really good test for you all to go out there and see that you were actually actively pursuing knowledge. Whether you liked it or not, you were stuck with us for, I think Colorado calculated it was 17 hours yesterday from start to finish. 17 and a half hours. So if you weren't pursuing it the whole time, then hopefully it was at least engaged for you all. So people always ask me, where the heck do you get your ideas? Where do you get all this stuff from? And there's so much things out there, but you know, this is me. This is kind of the jungle inside my head. How do you put all these things together? But what is so challenging when you go and you try to find all the different aspects out there, all the different leadership books that are there, all the anthologies from all across the world, from many generations, Harlan's generation, etc. You know, what you really see is that we've got all this noise now. We've got Twitter, we've got Facebook, we've got social media, we have all these things that are distracting you. You know, we've got text messages flying back and forth. I think the statistic was that there's more text messages every day than there are people on the planet. That's a pretty startling statistic. And there's a great quote that said, you know, if Mark Twain had Twitter, he probably would have been great at it, but he probably wouldn't have gotten around to writing all very good. So how do you limit those distractions? How do you stop the noise? How do you really get in and be intentional about what you do? That's about, you know, you getting into the knowledge. I think that comes a lot with experience. We're going to go quick with this. But, you know, from the Ruck standpoint, you know, from my standpoint, that's how you enable others to act. And you guys had a ton of experiences with that this weekend where you're out there really enabling others to act. You're really experiencing it. You're experiencing things with other people. You're not just there talking about it. You're talking about how does this apply back to your life. You're out there on the road course. You're getting there. You're helping each other. You have to rely on it. And so that experience is 10 times more powerful than the knowledge you actually put in. And what are you actually going to build and do with it? So think about that. That's the first big thing. What are you actually going to go back to do to enable others to act, to really take your knowledge to the next level? Because when you teach something, when you come back as a facilitator, when you're like, you know, Raleigh was talking earlier, going to be a facilitator at, you know, Edge and CLA and going on things, that's when you really learn these things. How do you apply it? From a fitness standpoint, a couple quick stories. This is my first week days, in case you guys didn't know that. So I was on the road team back in college. We did pretty well. But what I really got from it, aside from you know, destroying darkness, is honest and often as possible. Was, you know, when you look at when you're doing races in rowing, there's in the sprint races you have 6 boats side by side, and you're all there right next to each other, neck and neck. You know exactly what your position is relative to the next person. So you know if you're up, if you're down, how far, how much more do you have to go. You know all that stuff right there in the span of about 6 minutes, or the sprint races. When you have the long, what they're called head races, probably an unfortunate term, but the longer distance races that are about, you know, between 3 to 5 miles. And what you do is you all start, you're racing the clock. So you don't have people right by side next to you to see exactly where you are, what position you are in the race. And so it's about you, it's about the clock, and it's about where can you go to push yourself further to the next level. You don't expect to be better than the guy next to you. You got to know how good can I do. You have to go that hard and that fast. And I'm big on this quote, don't just do the best you can, be the best there is. Because there's a big difference. If you're just doing the best you can, you think you're doing well, but when you're doing the best, being the best there is, that's a whole other level. When we talk about this, what I'm talking about is on your campuses, it's not just enough to be better than the other fraternities. It's not just enough to be the best Greek-led organization. You can't just look left and right, you've got to look ahead. You've got to look at what is your potential and how can you really do that. You guys have a lot of these things today. You've heard model the way. How do you get back there and set the example for your organizations on your campus? We talked a lot about Phi Beta Kappa. You hear Will Traders talk about that a lot. You know, how do we go beyond Phi Beta Kappa? And really all that means is how do we lead the not just for the Greeks, not just for the student organizations, but across the board. When we talk about what is the profound difference that you can make, that's what we need to think, and that's what we need to go. We talk about service. Do not think your way into acting, you must act your way into your thinking. You can't think your way into acting, you have to act your way into your thinking. That goes back to that experience piece. You've got to get out there and do it. We work with 3 different schools in St. Louis. St. Louis is one of the worst school districts in the country, not accredited. People are shuffling all around. People are moving out of the city. They're moving left and right. One thing that we've done with Wells Fargo is we started working with these schools to help them. How can we partner up? How can we be good partners in the community? How can we be with them and set a common vision that we can all rally around to support the kids that are coming out of those schools? And actually, Becker's dad is one of the guys that I work with on that. So we're talking about inspiring a shared vision. These are the things that you sat down and did yesterday and the day before, really coming together with what that vision is. How do you get back and apply that? Because it's not enough to just figure out who you are. How do you take that and start to take that externally? How do you take that heart piece and make it manifest itself outside of there? It brings me to the last piece about people. Never doubt that a group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, is the only thing that has. For me, there's a big story, and this was hitting home to me the other night when Steve Schenkel was talking. We were talking about the ritual. It brought me back to my days as a regional director traveling out in the Northwest. And one of my first chapter visits was one of my toughest, probably the toughest thing I've had to do while I was on the road. Less than a week after I got there was one of their chapter brothers who was on the track team, and he was coming back from Colorado State University, about an hour south of Laramie. And they were driving back in a van with about 7 of the track members after the track meet. And that van got hit head on by a drunk driver. They were all ejected from the van, and they were all killed instantly. Remember the chapter of Shane's shadow. Shane was an absolutely amazing person. He was an Eagle Scout. He was an accomplished athlete. He was on the board of the student government. He was a great SigEp. He was working his way up into being on the executive board. Everything you could possibly do along with his whole life was ahead of him. It was right there. I mean, he was killing it. And he, unfortunately, was in that day. The whole chapter rallied together. They worked with the family. They went out there, little town, about an hour north of there. They set up all the funeral arrangements, and they brought the whole town together. We went up with them. We went up with the brothers that were there in the chapter, and we went and we sat with the family. It was in the student auditorium at the high school there. And there was about 1,000 people. I think pretty much the whole town was there. He was also a volunteer fireman, just to add to the rest of the mix. And the chaplain of the fire department came and gave one of the most incredible eulogies I've ever heard about this life that he lived. This man, when he left high school, coming into college, and just continuing that escalation every year. And after he was done with the eulogy, they took Shane's casket and they put it on top of a fire truck. And the fire truck went about a mile out to where the cemetery was, on the top of this cliff where we're looking at a valley. And the entire track team from the high school there was wearing these shirts that said, we'll miss you, Shane, we love you. They followed behind the fire truck all the way, weaving up and down these Wyoming roads. And as we got into the cemetery, all the words of the ritual started coming back to me. About watering for life, about your brothers being there by your side, never knowing when the grains of sand in the hourglass are going to run out. And it was something that was so meaningful for me. The brothers did the red rose ceremony. And one by one after the ceremony, they dropped the roses on the casket. The fire department was all around the entire area, overlooking this canyon off to the back. And they did one final hall page for Shane's shadow, which is their equivalent of 21-gun salute. And all in unison, you hear the dispatcher come over the radio and say, one last hall page, and all their radios went off. And they echoed across the canyon and came back, and mother was lost. But it was a true showing of brotherly love when they came in, and they gave the mother their roses, and they came and they all gave her a hug. And they gave her a plaque with all the things that Shane had done in the short time that he was in the chapter, the short time that he was in the university. And one of the other members of the track team was also a member of the chapter. And he wrote this: "It seems of late you crested a hill, and I cannot climb. You have taken a path, and I cannot follow. If I seek the courage to mimic your stride, perhaps upon a day when my spikes have been hung, we shall rise again for another run." I think about that from encourage the heart. How do we get out there? How do we instill this in people without having to have these kinds of tragic experiences? It's amazing when brothers can rally around it. And I started thinking about the weekend that you all had here, the two of SigEp's best, Steve Schenkel and John Hartman. And you guys got to experience the heart firsthand. You got to experience the word of the golden heart, and that's what this fraternity is all about. And how do you take that experience back with you? How do you think about that when you're talking about people, where you're encouraging them and motivating them? So those are the four things. That's how I break it up. That's how I think about the balanced man: internal, external, above the head, below the neck. You think about the four leadership practices about enable others to act, model the way, inspire, share vision, and encourage the heart. But I add a fifth one. For me, it's perspective. This one is a personal one for me. You guys have heard about my canyon trip. What you probably haven't heard is that the day before we ran, the morning of, when we ran the canyon, it's a 50-mile run across the Grand Canyon and back, rim to rim to rim. We climbed the highest peak in Arizona. It's called Humphreys Peak. It's about 14,000 feet. And kind of looking out at the top of the mountain, you have a perspective. You can see the Grand Canyon in the distance there. And me standing there, kind of looking out over the canyon, over where I was going to go over the next 24 hours, climb down from that mountain, go up to the canyon, run 50 miles, and come back. We got to the canyon, much like we have in our life, we have a lot of things that say you can't do it. Don't attempt to hike to the canyon, to the rim of the river, and back in one day. We're going to do that 4 times over in Richmond, climbing the highest peak that morning. I think back to challenge the process, because why not? Why shouldn't we do that? Why shouldn't we go out there and try to be as inspirational as we can? Get out there and do all these things we can do. And as I got to the other side, this is up north from the canyon looking back. And I looked back and I saw Humphreys Peak, where I had been not 24 hours ago, when the sun rose over the mountains there. And I started thinking back to the story about Shane's shadow and about how those speakers echoed throughout the canyon. And I started to think about it in terms of, where you are now. You're all on top of the mountain. You're looking out over the course of your life. And where is that going to take you? And when you get to the other side and you look back across that canyon at the things that you've accomplished in your life, and you look back at the place where now you see you're at the top of the mountain. It's not so big anymore. But where is that going to take you? How will your life echo? Where will you take it? How will you take these things that you've learned this weekend and not just let them die today, but to really take them with you when you go back to your chapters? Think about the why. Come to grips with who you are as a person. Be able to take that and translate that to your chapter, to your vision, and truly, truly make your life echo and make a profound difference.